Okay, it's 4 o'clock. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee for Monday, December 12th, 2016. And I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda we have before us. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Is there anybody here? This is a public hearing, so everybody will have an opportunity to speak on their citizen warrant article they may have sponsored or otherwise want to comment on. But is there public comment on any issue that's not on the agenda today? Seeing none, we'll move right along to the public hearing on citizen warrant articles A through KK, which is the convenient ordering system we have before us. And we will start right at the top with Article A and run through KK, and we'll call up the citizen sponsor in order. So right off the bat, we'll go to Article A, which is zoning change for 7 West Myacomet Road, submitted by Charles Fisher. Is Mr. Fisher here today? Does anybody else care to comment on Article A, the zoning change for 7 West Myacomet? Article B is a zoning change for the use chart swimming pools. I see Mr. Kucharavi here in the audience. Do you want to join us at the table here?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. So we did have the benefit of a primer on this article from Town Council last week, but if you want to explain to us your purpose in submitting the article. And
Yes, some feel that this article is no longer pertinent because of the voting down of the sewers. What this is really about is preserving the country-like atmosphere of Nantucket, where we live and have enjoyed the country-like. The accepted plan, Nantucket area plan states that the Nantucket residents want to maintain the country and low-density nature of their neighborhood, as well as maintain open space and access to the waterfront. 2 other village-town areas of Nantucket have no swimming pools. They are ROH and SOH. Old Nantucket is the 3rd village of Nantucket, and we feel it should have the same protection as those other villages to protect its environment and its nature.
great. Members of the committee, anybody have any questions, comments?
What's the, I know we shot pools down at the town meeting a couple of years ago, and I think I was the only one putting my hand up for pools. What's the big threat of a swimming pool to you?
The threat is it comes with big houses with several buildings and will change the character of the small town feel of Nantucket itself. I mean, it's a village out there, little houses tucked in. We don't want it to become a large type mega mansion type place. Development is fine, but we just don't want it to be with huge houses with several buildings and swimming pools and everything else.
So you feel that by introducing this article, you're going to, that the swimming pool is a way to limit that type of development?
I understand that many of the homes going in, swimming pool is kind of required.
Right. Got it.
You want the big house, you want the swimming pool.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that maybe by limiting the swimming pools, it just wouldn't be as attractive to put in a huge estate out in Nantucket.
Yeah.
And in terms of the sort of defined area of the village of Nantucket, maybe there was a map in the application, is there an area that you hope this restriction would apply to?
Leslie, do you have the map?
It's the green.
It's the green.
So the green, so the
Called the VR district,
VR district.
village residential.
okay. Thank you, that was helpful.
So now that there's no sewer, obviously, right now the dynamics of Nantucket keeps houses pretty small. So you believe with sewering,
It's going to come. I mean, we're not saying that it's never going to come. It just didn't come this time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Possible for me to comment as well?
Absolutely. I was just about to open it up to public comment. Thank you.
Leslie Forbes, 19 Long Pond Drive. And I just wanted to, I've been working with Bob and with Brad because, and I wanted to, I went to the planning department once the sewer expansion was moving along, and talked with the planning department, Leslie Snell, about to seek her opinion and her suggestions of things that we could do to maintain this Nantucket area plan, which was worked on by many Nantucket members and planning board members and accepted as the document in 2006. So this is the plan we've been trying to maintain and hold true to. So I did go to Leslie to work with her to say, what could we do? What are some suggestions that you might have? Now, we have not been to the planning board yet. That's still something that we have to do. So we don't know where this is going to end up, but at this point, we're working with the staff.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next up is Article C. This is a zoning map change, Lug 2 to Lug 1 in the South Shore Road area. Maria Rubin. No. Article D, zoning change, aircraft limitations. This, I know that Mr. Worth is not here today. Does anybody else care to speak on this? Okay. Article E. This is Article E and Article F are a yard sale. Companion articles, a yard sale for Scotts Way area, Christopher Ray. No? Would anybody else like to speak? Article G, non-binding ballot initiatives for, this has to do with the funeral home. Catherine Stover. Maybe I'll take the next few together. Articles H, I, and J, all sponsored by Catherine Stover. Nobody. Article K, this is the annual appropriations from the Community Preservation Committee, submitted by Ken Beaubrand. Moving right along. Article L, amend the sewer district, Kimball Avenue, Windward. Mr. Cohen?
Just very briefly, these are waterfront properties, and the two on Windward are already connected to the sewer, and that sewer line runs eastward along in front of all of these other properties, the 7 or 8 properties that are requesting to join. So because there's a line right there, the property owners would like the ability to hook up to it because they're not in the sewer district, they can't. These lots are large enough that you're not going to have really additional development. They already have as many bedrooms as they need. They already have as much ground cover as they want. But what you'd essentially be doing is preventing the nitrogen from going into the ocean instead of the sewer, if we could get these ones hooked up. It's not in the needs area, so it's questionable as to whether or not the DPW will support it, but they'd like to be able to hook up. From a financing point of view, it both adds immediate revenue to the town because all of these houses that would hook up would pay the connection fees and would pay the sewer privilege fees, and then theoretically that eats into the other end where there's a capacity issue, which is the one thing that I think that the FinCom and the town in general should do is re-examine the capacity of the wastewater treatment facility, because as there have been zoning changes and other land going into conservation and things like that, I think that, on one hand, the town takes the position, or parts of the town take the position of, we can't add people not in the needs area because because it's eating up future capacity, but it doesn't actually look at, well, where have we eliminated lots that were designated as that capacity. So to the extent there can be some updating of those numbers, I think it would be helpful, because if the town could then essentially sell that capacity by getting these fees, the town would benefit that way. So that's my financial pitch.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Members of the committee, any comments or questions?
Did you say there's already two that are hooked up that aren't in the needs area, but they're just hooked up?
They hooked up in '97, probably before any of this mattered, or before there were any rules in place. There's a validly issued DPW permit for the sewer line it used to be 25 Kimball, and now it's 1 and 2 Windward. And so this line just runs in front of these other houses.
How many?
I think it's 7.
Because usually isn't that part of the cleanup program where they add houses into the sewer district once they find out they're on sewer?
Yeah, so there's 8 lots that are proposed that are not currently connected and 2 that are. So I think it would be a little fun. What I'm basically doing is asking to expand the district across 8 lots that are not connected, and then to include 2 that are connected but not currently in the district.
I just have a question because I know that when I've been involved in that where there was houses that were on sewer, and obviously it wasn't in the district, and they were, like I said, a cleanup program where they went in and they did that. So you haven't spoken to Andrew about that as far as the opinion from towns. Do they have an opinion, or don't they? It seems there's already 2 there.
Well, the planning board doesn't have jurisdiction over this, although I think they like to see these hooked up. I've talked to the Board of Health, and in fact have been encouraged by the health director and the health members of the Board of Health to connect, but again, none of them really have the jurisdiction to issue those permits. It's the DPW and town meeting that can adjust the
Right, but doesn't the planner give their recommendation to say, yeah, that should have been in the plan, or that should have been part of the plan, or no?
Well, when I asked them about that, they said you have to file a warrant article first, and then we'll go through the process. So that's what we've done.
Thanks. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to comment on this article? No. Okay, don't go anywhere. Steve? We have Article M, acquire a portion of North Road, and Article N, sell, convey a portion of North Road.
Okay. So this portion of North Road is unconstructed and is essentially between 2 property owners, and they would like to close it between them and, close it off. I don't know that there's really anybody in the area that would like to see it opened up. So I think they generally would maintain the traffic flow that's there now by closing it.
Any questions from the committee?
This is a parcel that the real estate committee would have to sort of opine on.
Yes, we'll get an opinion from the real estate committee on these articles and also on the next 2, OP, which sounds like a similar yard sale situation with Sandwich Road.
Yeah, that's right. Sandwich Road is again an unconstructed road. There are no lots on it that have access on it, so no one would be giving up anything. It's essentially used as people's free backyard now, so the town might as well take it, sell it, tax it.
Do we, when we do this in Surfside a lot, every year it seems like, to straighten out that area. Is this just maybe not on the agenda yet? I mean, obviously it takes money to take proportions and then convey them in the yard sale program and the rest of it. So it's just something you're trying to, is it on your radar?
When you say their radar, do you mean the planning board?
Yeah.
Well, I spoke to Andrew about it, and he was supportive of all of them, but he said he's got enough work on his plate to bring it as a citizens article,
Okay.
which I thought was fair enough. There's no current use of this land except through people informally using it.
Further questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Next up is Article Q, which is another zoning map change in the Skyline Woodland area. Paul Smith is the sponsor. Is there anybody else who cares to comment on Article Q? Article R, Lug 2 to Lug 1, the zoning change in the Monahans Okawa area. Barbara Clark is the sponsor. Hi, would you care to join us?
Thank you. Pretty plain and simple, really. The lot 51 is existing as, it's an undersized lot. It's 1 acre right now. We'd like to be able to change the zoning from log 2 to log 1 so it can conform with the ground cover and the setbacks, etc. as log 1. That's it.
So it's just in order to make sure, so it's conforming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, it's a it's a less than 2 acre lot
Yes.
in a 2 acre zone.
Correct.
It looks like it's about a third of an acre. Is that right? Is it number 51 Okawa?
It's number 51. It should be 1. Oh, sorry, 50.
50.
1 acre.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And we'll get an opinion from the real estate committee on this too before we make our motion.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Article S, acquire unnamed private ways in the Low Beach area. Arthur Reed is the sponsor. Okay, that's a yard sale companion article with Article T, to sell and convey those same unnamed ways. Article U and Article V, also companion articles, yard sale. Arthur Reed is the sponsor. Those are in the South Shore Road area. Does anybody care to comment on those? Moving along to Article W, good timing, Michael. This is your home rule petition charter change relating to FinCom. Would you like to come up here and explain to us?
Oh, hello, I'm up.
You are up. Good timing, sir.
It was so quiet when I came in here. I didn't have the list of I saw on the agenda what does it say, like AA to KK? the
Yeah,
number.
well, you timed it perfectly. This is
So I
this is
didn't
your time to
have to-
shine.
Sorry, Bill. Thank you. I think I'm acquainted with most everybody here. My name's Mike Glowacki, and I have that citizens article on the way the Finance Committee is appointed. I guess I would like to say, so my involvement in local government has gone on for quite a long time. In my earliest working years, I paid what attention I could, but I was people busy when they're young and working constantly. Bernie Grossman used to say, you guys have to get involved, and that sort of thing. And I was on a couple of committees at what we used to call the new fire station in the upstairs meeting room. And the issues were all about infrastructure, affordable community year-round, land use, property taxes, regulations. Some things don't really change too very much. So through the years, in various capacities, I've been on different boards and committees, and I've been something of a student of what works in government and what, where the tricky points are. And one of the things that peripherally I've noticed is it seems that maybe on a kind of a small town aspect here, we tend to do things maybe a little bit less formally than they are someplace, so that one studies the parliamentary process, it's kind of interesting things happen when things are done, I think, maybe less formally than the process calls for. We think we don't have to go all the way to have the vote. We do things by consensus, and people interpret that later on the way they choose to, like that. So in recent years, lots of questions crop up every year and after the second town meeting in terms of how effective it is, how well town meeting's working, is it, what are we going to do over time? And is it really being the most effective it can be as a legislative body? And if you start to talk about that, think about how the government works, then how effective are we currently and efficient with a board of selectmen of 5 members functioning in the executive capacity? So my article that we've put forward is, I think it's quite simple. It's not driven by any particular ideology that I'm aware of. It's not about any of the current or recent people this way or that way, any of the issues, but it's mostly about this growing idea that I've had that if government is always about how effective is it, like a dictatorship is very efficient, or how accessible is it to the people, which kind of makes it slower and more bogged down, and you like the yin and the yang and the pull back and forth. So if people become more and more, if they get frustrated with how town meeting is serving their needs, I kind of had this idea that we see what's going on nationally, like certain tensions and frustrations build up, and then bang, there's some big change, or like all new thing. And I think it just behooves all of us to think about the thing structurally and a little bit abstractly. And maybe if we could take some steps, the thing will just continue to work well. So the simple thing is it's about separation of powers. The Massachusetts Municipal Association puts out their guidebooks and their guidelines and talks about the role of the Finance Committee, as I get it, to advise town meeting. And we've had our town charter in place now for roughly 20 years or so, I think, give or take. And that was a big step in terms of getting things sort of more structured. But one of the carryovers was that we appoint the Finance Committee by the 5-member Board of Selectmen. And people that watch how that works, sometimes you can see what's happening, and sometimes you can't quite tell who got appointed and why, and have a vote of 5 people to make it happen, and strange things happen sometimes. I will have a whole bunch of examples if anybody ever thinks that's constructive to do, but I don't really think it's the point. So when you look at state government, for instance, or city governments, in state government we have the executive branch, the governor, legislative branch. The governor proposes a budget. The legislature looks at it quite independently. Town meeting, our legislative branch, has no standing committees. It has what the members bring to town meeting and has the recommendations that come out of the Finance Committee. So in the state level or the national level, the executive proposes the budget. You don't see the legislative body relying upon the advice of somebody who's been appointed by that very same executive body. It's sort of a conflict is inherently. And I think there's lots of things that we can do with government that makes it meet our needs locally over time. Keeps it moving along reasonably efficiently, and also without giving up our access. You know, if we go to a different kind of a structure altogether, you don't have town meeting, you have elected people deciding what the taxes are going to be and that sort of thing. My guess is that we want to keep the town meeting going for as long as we can. So I did consult with Mr. Giorgio of Town Council's office. He came down and on that advertised time, and I just discussed this with him, and I checked with some folks up at Mass Municipal Association. There's a spreadsheet analysis of the various towns that are organized open town meeting. Almost all of them, or I should say the vast majority, are appointed by the moderator. The idea is the Finance Committee advises town meeting and isn't stepped on from any other direction. There are a couple of other ways that it is done, I suppose, and I didn't really have a strong feeling about what it should be. I just went with the most common model that is out there in the state, but I happen to believe that over time we're headed for difficulty if we don't think about these things. So that's it in a nutshell, I think.
Great, thank you. So you and I have talked a bit about this in the past, outside of meetings, and I signed your petition.
Thank you.
But I don't think I understand exactly what the purpose of it is. It seems to me it's a solution in search of a problem, but you alluded to having examples of what the problem is. So
Some of that gets into personalities and ideologies and different things that have gone on, and I'm not sure how many conversations we want to, bore down into on that.
well, maybe without names, you can,
Yeah, I mean, I
just.
can go back another time with some examples of that. Then.
Sure,
Yeah,
yeah, I
so-
mean, we can make, another public meeting, available to you to do that. I think it would be good, at least for me, as one member of the committee, to hear what is the problem that we're fixing.
Well, I think what I heard you say is that you think there's an inherent conflict of interest in having the select people
Well, separation of powers. Right?
appoint the finance committee people because we're the same people who are advising them on financial issues.
Right,
You're
so.
advising the town meeting. The selectmen beat the heck out of the town manager to get a budget that they want proposed, and any other things that the board of selectmen by right brings forward. And then they appoint this group to advise the voters on their proposals. And I think it's just an obvious, it's not done, but maybe one other town in the Commonwealth, and
Right, so I guess again, one opinion is that, at least in my time here, I don't remember this committee being shy about disagreeing with the Board of Selectmen on a range of issues.
I was looking at the minutes before I came today for last spring before town meeting, and it's a little bit, I think it's accurate what's in the minutes, and there's some things that, obviously not every word gets said in there. And there was a discussion, we saw how to pay for the sewers go all over the place, out of developed over a long time through various committees, and go to the selectmen, and come this way, and this way, come to the finance committee with, from outsiders viewpoint, quite a bit of pressure. It was phrased as we all want to go in with the same recommendation and be unanimous about it. Or one could hear, we want you to do it this way, you can hear what you hear. There was discussion then right before it went to the printer about, gee, maybe we ought to just put this more on the taxes and less on the improvements. And there was a sort of like what's the view around the table, so it doesn't show up in the minutes as a motion and a decision. The view on the table, around the table, was, I think, quite closely divided, something like 4-3 or 5-4. And the people who remember what they remember from that meeting, my recollection is that the arguments against going more heavily on the taxes was, well, we owe it to the selectmen we promised so-and-so, and we did this and that. It's sort of exactly what I'm talking about. And there are other examples, and I believe we're going to see more and more of that if we don't take a step ahead. That's
Thank
all.
you. Yeah, that answers my question exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
Anyone else?
Chairman?
Sure.
Chris Barnes?
Please, join
What
us.
specifically is the request or the proposed article? I don't understand. What, is it that the moderator appoint?
Yes, the moderator would appoint the finance committee members.
And that's the model that predominates in the common?
That's the testimony we have here today. I don't know if that's
I
true.
just didn't hear that part of it
Right.
in the presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
That was fun.
Thank you. Okay, on to Article X, which is a zoning change. Numerous parcels in the Nantucket area. Mr. Fleming? X comes quicker than you think, I guess, huh?
Brad Fleming, 232 Nantucket Road. The proposed article is similar to the article with the pools, in that we would sort of codify how to preserve the village quality in Nantucket. I think I'm also on the MAB, Nantucket Advisory Board for the HDC, and we have come up with a plan to incorporate all of Nantucket in one group, and this is similar to the map here. This is what we're looking at right now, but that is the Nantucket area plan. So we would like all of Nantucket to be limited to 25 feet and have it written in stone, so it's not up to the HDC or the MAB to say that this is the height limitation.
Great.
I mean, we might come back later and have that expanded, Because if the HDC approves the R area of what Nantucket is, you're going to have a lot of the property that's on Warren's Landing Road, all the way up to Eel Point, and some other areas. But that hasn't been approved by the HDC as yet.
Okay.
So you feel it's not restrictive enough, or we haven't addressed enough as a result of maybe sewers showing up?
And it's, you know, it really doesn't even come in, the sewers don't even come into it. It's just this is one way of preserving that feel. I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to do 3 or 4 buildings. The HCC is not going to allow 3 or 4 buildings that are all the same height. So you're going to have to differentiate. And if you start at 25 feet, you're getting down. So it's also limiting how many buildings can be on a piece of property.
Which would go against what a lot of the stuff that we've done to create more buildings on the property, that we sort of said, versus a tertiary dwelling. And so
Well, I mean, it's a little bit different now because, you know, the sewer's not coming out. So, you know, you have, well, there's what, 4 or 5 different zones in that. You have LUG1, you have village residential. This is just to put them all in one specific group with a 25-foot.
Is there a height limitation like that in other zones on the island?
There is one, I believe, in Old Nantucket, in the village residential. I believe that is at 25 feet.
I think it exists in Cisco also, in that, I'm trying to remember the name of that enclave of houses that's in the VR also. It's in small pockets around the island.
So, I mean, in essence, we're looking at a total of 760 parcels, and of that, only 179 are actual lots. You have 426 are open space, it's either owned by the town of Nantucket, Land Bank, Nantucket Conservation Trust, Mass Audubon, and another one. And then there's amazing amount of property. There's 155 parcels that are underwater, that are still on the tax map.
Well, this article may not have anything to do with the sewer, but I do remember there was some discussion at this committee about zoning being the appropriate way to protect the character of the neighborhood. So I applaud you and everyone else in the neighborhood for bringing these articles forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Would you like to speak? I do. Yes, thanks.
Leslie Forbes again, and just, we can get into some description of areas that unless you know the ins and outs, they're confusing. So the Nantucket area plan area, the Nantucket area plan area is this, which was from this original document. So that's what we're talking about. The village residential district is smaller than this, and in the village residential district, it is already zoned at a 25-foot limit. So again, when we went to the planning department to talk about things, there was a suggestion that why don't you use an existing overlay district, because the planning department's not real happy to create a lot more overlay districts. Use the existing overlay district of Village Height Overlay District, VHOD, where it is set for 25 feet, and just expand the boundaries to an existing boundary. And this is an existing boundary that you can find in the map geo of Nantucket and in the zoning stuff. So we're trying to use existing tools to provide that protection for the Nantucket area plan.
Does anyone know, is there a lot of stuff out there that doesn't comply, that would have to be grandfathered in?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer.
I'm trying to visualize it.
The 25-foot limit went in, that changed. The Village Height Overlay District was created in 2009. I think the height limitations prior to that were sort of based on a different time.
Thank you. Okay, on to Article Y, bylaw amendment.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, yes, please, sorry.
Bill Greeter, 10th Street. Right now, just speaking for the Mattocket Conservation Association, and I believe we'll hear the same thing as town meeting comes up from, there's actually 5 associations in Mattocket, and Mattocket residents is really the Tristram side. But MCA was the catalyst for the Mattocket area plan to be created during its conception, and this article, we think, helps to strengthen what the Mattocket area plan is. And the whole idea of the Mattocket area plan was to try to maintain the village effect. We think this is one more tool to do that. We think there's others that have to come forward, but taking it in chunks so that the folks can understand what's really happening. So we'll be, all of the associations are going to be surveying the memberships, and so we'll have, make sure that everybody in that individual knows exactly what the article is. A lot of them are non-voters, but we're soliciting their information so we can say collectively, the membership of each group at least has been given this information and told what it actually means.
Great. Well, thanks again for these articles. Okay. Now on to Article Y, Bylaw Amendment, Affordable Lots and Units. Linda Holland. Article Z, another bylaw amendment, Residential Housing Size Limits. Linda Holland again. Is there anybody who cares to speak on either of these articles?
I'm not sure which one of her articles contains a discussion about living space. Is that one of those?
Yes, Z. Yep.
All right. The only comment that we have had is that a particular article is a new concept for limiting use of the property by replacing the metric of ground coverage ratio with a metric for living area. And there's no definition presented in the article of what the living area is. It's been talked that it might be mirrored after what Chilmark has done, but unknown. You can't tell that from the article. And it's not only obviously just for the Mattocket concern, but that's a big change for all property owners. So that I would expect that there's going to be some spirited conversation on at least that part of the article.
I expect you're right, and we do need more clarity on what this all means. Thank you. Okay. Article AA, reaffirm the separation of the fire and police chiefs. Jeffrey Allen.
Short point of order. I was sent some information by Mr. Allen, and I sent it to David Worth to distribute. So
Okay.
it would be distributed, so I don't know if anybody got that. It was sent today, so.
I did not receive that yet, but I see it says the strong chief law. I have seen that. I think there was some discussion about that last meeting, and we'll follow up on that at a future meeting. Second article also has to do with the fire department and fire chief roles. It's Article BB, also Jeffrey Allen. Does anybody in the audience have anything they'd like to have heard about the separation of the fire and police chief roles? Okay. Next articles, CC, DD, EE, and FF have to do with acquiring and conveying Nancy Ann Lane, Mayflower, and Daffodil Lanes.
Hi, how are you? I think most of you know Dave Arminetti, who's my colleague with Richmond Great Point. These are essentially related to the project on Old South Road. Just to give a brief introduction, and Dave happened to be here, so it was easy to throw him the technical conversation. We are, in the case of the Mayflower Circle and Daffodil Lane, working with the residents of that particular neighborhood. We had noted to them through their council that we'd be doing this as sort of a belt and suspenders kind of initiative. There's 4 articles here, For each, there's a pair of articles, so there's a takings and there's a conveyance. So that's the reason for the match. We are, like I said, currently working with the neighbors to talk about how we might compensate them for what is not a fee interest in the ends of the cul-de-sacs. And so that's still ongoing, but we didn't want to miss this town meeting, so we put these articles forward knowing that should we not get to town meeting with an agreement, we would not probably be passing these, at least this article. The other has to do with Nancy Ann Lane and a reconfiguration of the footprint of the development, so that's a little different because there's not a neighborhood involved with that. So just to throw that there in terms of your general, the general picture, I'll now have Dave explain to you exactly what the takings and the conveyances will do. Thanks.
Thanks. Good afternoon, folks. As Patty said, these both kind of look forward to what we would call the implementation stage of some of our development.
We need your name.
Oh, I'm sorry.
record, please.
Dave Arminetti, Richmond Company and Richmond Great Point Development.
Can you spell your last name?
Slowly. Armanetti. David. Thank you. So these look ahead to the implementation stage of two aspects of our development, really the two major housing initiatives that I think the committee's been aware of for the last couple of years, which is our workforce rental housing project, which we're terming Meadows 2, and our workforce single-family home ownership project, which we're terming Sandpiper Place 1 and 2, which is 32 acres, essentially the eastern half of the entirety of the 60 acres that we purchased from Mr. Glowacki in August of 2013. This moves forward the effort that was approved by special town meeting November of 2015 that we've been working with the neighbors and the planning board on for the better part of the last year. And this anticipates that we would get action by the planning board between now and town meeting, hopefully favorable action that would then allow us to start to move forward to the implementation and construction aspects of the project and to deliver these units both for people to live in and for the town to get these units on the subsidized housing inventory list, which, as the committee is aware of, is a high priority here, both for us as the developer and the town as a whole. What this essentially does is uses the vehicle of the town meeting and Board of Selectmen's eminent domain authority, essentially under the yard sale program, to really expedite, which would otherwise be a longer, more circuitous process through the land court. These are two separate actions, but they're very similar in that they're achieving the same thing. And that one, to move forward with the preferred site plan that we've worked together on with the planning board and the community, and particularly the Cedar Crest 3 neighborhood, which is the residential neighborhood immediately east of us, that most of our single-family housing is part of, along with Cedar Crest 1, which is slightly further to the south. There's a couple of stubs in the actual cul-de-sacs of Mayflower Circle and Daffodil Lane that are part of the new housing area, that in order to make the site plan work in what we see as an optimal way, and what most of the neighborhood, virtually all of the neighborhood, seems to think is an optimal way, is to turn our lots westward towards Lover's Lane and away from the existing subdivision and create a separation and a buffer. So in order to do that, we have to essentially extinguish those little stubs and cul-de-sacs that we own the fee interest in, but when the subdivision was done back in 1990, all the people within the Cedar Crest 3 subdivision were given rights of access across all the roads in the subdivision, including these stubs and cul-de-sacs. Even though there's nothing built around them and there's no reason to drive around them, there are rights through the land court in those roads that have to be extinguished in order for us to technically erase that line and put our site plan down the way we want it and the way that most of the neighbors want it. So it's a technical undertaking, but it's important in terms of being able to deliver the site plan in the manner that we've talked about with the planning board and the neighbors. Without the benefit of these actions by the town, we'd essentially have to go the long way around the barn with land court and get individual signatures from all the individuals who have these rights. And ostensibly, if you get to land court in this process, and some of you know or maybe have heard anecdotally, it's always a coin flip. You could get all the way to the end with the land court judge, which could take some time, and you may have 30 of the 36 signatures or 35 of the 36 signatures. And depending on the judge you get, he or she may say, nice try, but what about number 36? If you don't have number 36, you don't have the right to move forward. So by being transparent, explaining why we're doing it, it allows the town to consider this and essentially make sure that we don't get caught up in a technicality at the land court that will then not allow the project to move forward as it's currently contemplated. If these actions didn't go forward, we'd probably be forced to reconfigure the site plan in a way that kept the stubs and the cul-de-sacs in place and faced the lots into the neighborhood, which is
not the most efficient site plan for us, but more importantly, not the preferred site plan for the Cedar Crest 3 neighbors. And I think we'll hopefully be at a point at town meeting where those neighbors will be able to show up in number in an organized way and articulate that as we move forward with these articles and once we get to town meeting itself. So that's the Mayflowers.
And part of the issue there is a zoning change, of course, is the lot size. So that the Cedar Crest neighbors have been very clear about the nature of their neighborhood and retaining that nature, and our lots are obviously smaller, and we don't, and, you know, we wouldn't necessarily want to, or in our discussions, the messaging has been that they wouldn't want that kind of density within their own footprint. So this is a way to sort of balance that and put the buffer between the two and essentially separate out and make distinct two separate neighborhoods. Again, the idea would be to go forward through a negotiation process as well as this process. And obviously, at town meeting, I would venture to guess, having been to as many as I have, should one neighbor stand up and say, we're not for this, this is not going to be something that we're going to get passed. So we understand that. So, you know, again, for all of our sake, if we come to an agreement, we would want that agreement to be expeditiously executed, and I believe they would as well once we get to the end of the day, and that's the point here. So.
And I guess the only additional important point as far as the FinCom and your role is considered, we made it clear, and we went so far as in the article itself to be explicit and say that any cost that would be incurred by the town, including legal, engineering, or any compensation, will be borne by us directly. And these articles have been vetted out by town council more for the legal procedural type effort. They obviously don't have an opinion on the merits, but we wanted to make sure that they vetted it from a legal and technical standpoint, which they did. So the town will incur zero cost, even if there is compensation due to any of the landowners at the end of the day, in conjunction with the eminent domain action. We would bear all that cost. And then the Nancy Ann Lane is a very similar action. It's just more in the middle of the commercial industrial component of our portfolio. And what this would allow us to do, I'm sure many members of the committee drive through it often, will allow us to basically reroute the kind of quirky S-curve in front of Parcel Plus that then goes out the Greg Lynn Avenue extension to Old South Road and allow us to put in a properly engineered straight road that connects the straight part of Nancy Ann Lane in front of Sales Seafood before it starts the curve, straight out to Old South to the main entrance. It'll be, you know, engineered properly in terms of what our engineers and the town's traffic engineers prefer. And these rights will be replaced, the existing rights that people have in that road will be replaced in the new road in kind. Nothing's being lost except we're straightening out a quirky curve in the road.
And then lining it up with, more properly with the Nashville neighborhood, because currently it's a little askew and it's a little difficult and dangerous. Many times you're trying to make a left-hand turn one or the other. So this will help that as well.
As Mrs. Grimmer can attest to.
Look at
And the same thing, we're proposing that we would incur all of the costs that the town might incur, whether it be legal, engineering, or compensation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Questions from the committee?
Just one, as far as, subdivision law is always about access, so when you see you're getting rid of the cul-de-sacs, you're still not limiting access to where it went before. You see that's because you're cutting off something that you have to get a special permission order, it may be, because as long as you still give an easement to somebody to a certain area.
Yeah, I guess if we could explain, this is a pretty unique situation that these are dead-end cul-de-sacs, and we own all the land around all of them. It just so happens that these were approved as, one big network of streets.
Okay.
And it was previously contemplated that the developer at the time, Mr. Galacki, would just sell all these R20 lots, and it would continue the neighborhood.
So
Now
none of those are sold, you're saying?
none of these are sold. They're all still owned by us. And we're basically just drawing a line now across where our new subdivision is. And as the Cedar Crest 3 folks have acknowledged, there's no real need for anybody except to go on a joyride around a cul-de-sac on a Tuesday night to have access here. In fact, their preference, generally speaking, can't speak for all of them, but there's a lot of testimony on the record that their clear preference as an association in a neighborhood would be to turn our subdivision west towards Lover's Lane and basically create kind of a firewall or a buffer here. And this helps to achieve that.
And just because people had access to somewhere they really didn't have to go to begin with, you have to go through all this?
Yeah, because it's land court.
Well, I just thought because if you gave access the other direction like you want to, that you would change your plan and you kind of can't do it.
No, because it's land court and it's registered lands, those are registered rights, so you have to go through the land court process to extinguish them. And that's the magic of at least having the vehicle open to us to go to town meeting and ask for eminent domain, which would expedite this pretty significantly.
And I should add, I mean, we're in negotiations, so not to get specific, but when we speak compensation, we're speaking real compensation. So we're essentially making sure the neighborhood is left whole at the end of the day, and, you know, again, that's part of our discussions right now. So we're respecting that, even though, like you said, there's no real reason, but the law is the law, and that's how it was constituted. So, and we're fine with that, recognizing that we still want to keep good relations with the neighborhood, so.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Articles GG and HH, which is yard sale in the West Quays Hollister Road area.
Hi, Lucy Dillon. A neighbor down Bassett Road. Jim Phillips is a summer person, and he needs to upgrade his septic system. So he has asked me to put forward this article so that he can upgrade his system.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I don't remember the number on Bassett Road. I just got this notice yesterday.
Do you happen to know if the system's failing or if he's enlarging the system?
I don't know. I don't know. And people can say anything.
Right.
I'm at 18 and 20 Bassett.
What's the address again?
I don't know what his is. I think it's the third one from the waterfront. It's down there. And of
Okay.
course, it would affect the pond at
It's
UMass Field
number
Station.
30 Bassett.
Okay. It's Jim and Marta Phillips. And that goes up through my lots 18 and 20, which 18 I can't develop because of MESA regulations and wetlands.
And I'm just curious, why the taking of this land or taking
Because
this
he-
land
he-
enables him to, why does he need this to
Well,
upgrade his septic system?
the size of his lot will be larger, so I'm guessing he wants, maybe his system's failing, maybe he just wants to add an extra bedroom to the system, so you need more land area.
Well, it's in the harbor watershed, so he needs an inspection every 5 years by the new regs.
And if you can develop the land anyway,
Yeah.
at least this gives you some value.
Well,
Oh, for me?
this
Are you
property's
talking about
far
for you?
away. This one's 18, and we're talking about this section up here. This
Yeah.
right here.
I have no motivation. In fact, I would probably prefer not to do it because if I get reassessed.
Well, good for you for coming here for your neighbor anyway.
Well, yeah, I'm on the land council, so water quality is a big issue, and I'm hoping that, you know, he puts in he would have to put in an appropriate septic system. I don't know what his real motivation is, but
I see.
there is a lot of those houses down there at the end of Bassett Road and along Quays are right up to the harbor.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any questions?
Okay, Article II is a zoning change, Evergreen Way, Lug 2 to Lug 1. And the next one is JJ, similar zoning change, Lug 2 to R40 in the Evergreen Way area. Lindsay Knapp is the sponsor. Moving along to the last article, KK, zoning change on Airport Road from R20 to CN. Kim Glowacki. He's not here. Anybody else care to speak on that? It's the last one, last chance. Nobody. Okay. So with that, we conclude the public hearing on citizen warrant articles. And you're all welcome to stick around. We're going to continue to discuss these articles for a little while. Not long. Not long. So what is the pleasure of the committee? We have on our agenda a discussion of these articles. We can take action on any if we choose. We don't have to discuss or take any action. Have you heard anything today that compels you to ask any further questions?
My discussion for the zoning articles remains the same as last week. You know, just that I guess I'll say I'm not in favor of any of them until someone can tell us what
their
their
scrutiny anyway, but we're going to wait until we hear back from the planning board.
It's just going to be hard for me to talk. I mean, that's my opinion.
Okay.
So feel free to change it with data.
Yeah. Well, that's what we have the planning department and planning board for. We'll wait to be swayed.
When you say you're not in favor of any of them, I mean, it seems like they go two different directions. I mean, you're just not in favor of either direction?
I just don't think you can make these. I mean, I'm just for you guys as well. So you know, I'm talking about the upzoning or downzoning of any area. Yeah, I mean, we don't know what it's going to do to the systems around it, and all of them are down, or what are we calling that? More dense, making things more dense. I believe. I don't think we have any zoning articles.
Yeah, so there was like restrictions and things, right? Zoning bylaw restrictions.
Yeah, I'm talking about
cutting
cutting lots up. So like in
You're
particular,
talking about the zoning map changes.
yeah, the
not
map changes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so that's why I was
that
making
a
it clear to you guys. I mean, I think honestly what they're doing in Nantucket is great. But in terms of the map changes, I just think it's, you know, impossible to have an intelligent discussion about this stuff without really knowing the impacts. So I'm going to just continue to oppose them until someone can give me meaningful data to work with. Because otherwise we're basically, you know, driving by looking in the rearview mirror.
I understand. I thought, I didn't know if you were referring to the bylaws.
No, I think honestly what has been done in Nantucket addresses a lot of the, you know, issues people were discouraged about with the potential of sewering, and I think that's a great way to address these issues without having to bring in the sewering and the harbor health and all that. You guys are preserving, you know, they're trying to preserve a you know, uniqueness to the area. I think we all can appreciate.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I mean, I regret that we didn't pass the sewer, but you know, that notwithstanding, I think this is the appropriate way to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. So, you know, good for you for bringing these forward, and I, frankly, personally, I hope they're all successful. Joe?
Not much to add. I mean, I think I'd like to hear from the planning board and certainly the real estate committee on any of these issues. Planning board especially, since unlike you guys, I'm not a real estate guy. And I like to hear whether these articles are consistent with the various plans and zoning, you know, preferences that have been in place for a while.
I mean, there's not a lot on here that doesn't make sense. I mean, with the exception of the whole moderator business.
Right.
Because I'm not 100% sure that that's true, that other towns, the board of selectmen don't appoint the finance committee. I believe they do.
I think John Giorgio said the other day that other towns, that it's not an unusual way to have it happen, but I'm not sure that our current form is unusual either.
No, I don't think it's the vast majority of towns with open town meeting have the moderator appointed. That's not what John Giorgio said.
And even if they did, the selectmen are still the body that collects the applications and reviews them and gives them to the moderator.
This is more anecdote than anything, but I mean, I think Mr. Kowalski's recollection of that meeting last year is backwards. I think it was the FinCom that pushed the Board of Selectmen towards, you know, increasing the percentage of the financing by the tax base, as opposed to any discussion that, gee, we want to.
Well,
whatever it was that he said, I said, I don't think that's what we discussed.
I share your recollection, and you know, I'll say or reiterate what I said before. In my 4 or 5 years on this committee, I don't remember a whole lot of you know, bowing to the whims of the Board of Selectmen. I think, you know, if anything, we haven't gone along with enough of what they've done, in the opinion of some members of the board.
And while it may be true that upon, you know, at the end of a particular finance committee member's term, if he or she reapplies and the Board of Selectmen decides they don't want to, I mean, you could not get reappointed, that's true. But it takes a couple of years to actually change the character of the committee, and by that time, the character of the Board of Selectmen has changed. So I'm not sure it's,
Right.
I agree with you. I think it's a, solution in search of a problem, so.
Yeah, I guess my one thought is just that, sometimes too much democracy dilutes the process, and if we're electing dozens of people on a regular basis, we can all lose track of kind of who's doing what and who might be whose constituency is really kind of how I'm thinking. I think with the Board of Selectmen kind of working from the top down, it's just a little bit more effective way of governing.
Chris, what do you think about your brother's article?
Mike's I don't know the history that you guys recollect. Mike's a pretty smart guy in terms of process. He has a viewpoint that good process leads ultimately to good solutions.
Yeah.
I grasp it theoretically. I think it's a good question. I'd like to know the data on, is it most towns, is it a majority, is it not a majority? I think that'd be interesting to know. Other than that, I don't have a strong viewpoint.
I would also say, I think his proposed structure would probably work. If you want to make the town moderator the individual or the entity that approves the applications, it doesn't work. I'm not sure. I just don't see why we need to do it.
I do think his point of, I think at least stopping to think about strengthening town meeting, because I think, there is, I hear rumblings from time to time, people, should be a representative town meeting, or outgrowing town meeting as a form of government. To me, that'd be a huge shame.
Yeah.
And I think there's a kernel of what Mike's getting at that says, if you take the time and sort of re-examine and make sure we're doing everything we can to make town meeting the best it can be, so for those of us who feel strongly that it should be preserved, if it can preserve it, I don't know. To me, there's something interesting in that. I don't know if this is the time for this or this.
Well, I agree with you, and that's that's why I signed his petition. Having this discussion, I think, is important. I think that in the end, my analysis is probably going to be that we don't need a change, but having the discussion about what change makes sense is always good to have. I consider my obligation to town meeting and to the voters and the taxpayers, not to the Board of Selectmen. They may vet the various applications that they get, but I don't feel that I'm beholden to them. I hope everybody else at the committee feels the same way. And if there was evidence that that wasn't the case, that we were, voting for a future appointment, then maybe, there would be cause to change the system. But I just haven't seen that evidence. So. I think we'll wait for David before I ask for a motion on that, but that's.
Sure.
Having lived in the community and worked with the FinCom, they call it AdCom, for 40 years, that was appointed by the town moderator. Some of Mr. Glowacki's concern was Rebecca in that town as well. The moderator appointed the AdCom, and the thought is that the AdCom worked for the moderator because the town meeting is the moderator's meeting. It's not the selectmen's meeting. It's not the town manager's meeting. It's the moderator's meeting. But there were still the same concerns, or Joe Schmo doesn't get on because the moderator doesn't like him or whatever. So you still have that same scenario regardless. So there's got to be other reasons besides, I would think, just a concern of how somebody gets on the board. How does the rest of it work? That might be a town to solicit some information with, because even though it's that form of government with an open town meeting, there's some articles of late, or town meetings as of late, where the discussion isn't the same as Nantucket. Is it time to go to some other form of a town meeting? Is it representative the way to go, or whatever? And then when you talk with folks that have gone that way, and you do the research, a lot of them would love to come back to an open town meeting because it's the last bastion of democracy. Because when you go to a representative town meeting, taxpayers can't just get up and speak. We have to ask permission. The way that currently here, non-residents have to ask and get permission to speak. So the devil's in the detail is how familiar you are, comfortable with what you're experiencing now. So it'll be a big leap to sell that.
Thank you.
I'll just say something, just since I'm brand new, by way of perspective, I was on the finance committee in the town of Lenox, Massachusetts for 8 years. And we definitely had an established culture that was the relationship between the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen, where we were responsible for voting on the things that were put in front of us. And when we disagreed, those were the times that prompted the best conversation with the Board of Selectmen, in the sense that nobody wanted, our agreement was, when the warrant articles went before the town, we had either clearly said yes or no, and everybody knew why. And we did not like to often disagree with the Board of Selectmen publicly at the town meeting, because those conversations were best held between the two groups of people. And lots of solutions got hashed out that way.
Interesting. Well,
But nobody ever in the 8 years, nobody ever said, let's move to the moderator appointing.
right, right. So how did you think that worked? I mean, do you think that people were afraid that the disagreements were, no?
No, I thought it was all very transparent.
Yeah, good. Well, I think the system we have works okay and well enough not to need a home rule petition or a charter change. Are there any other articles we want to discuss?
I have one small question. This notion of swimming pools, has it been, is that a defined term? I mean, does that get into, have you come up against this before? Is that a hot tub? Is that a lap pool? Is that
Yeah,
a-
well, it's interesting. I've seen developers create, large cold water hot tubs in town. So, it's starting to become an issue. Well, it's not an issue because nobody talks about it, but, people are starting to do that. So I've always wondered that myself, but there is a definition. It does have to do with the square footage.
Does, okay.
Yeah, I believe the hot tub is something like nothing over 10 feet by 10 feet.
Right, yeah,
I believe
maybe
that's
a little larger.
maybe a little
But,
larger.
but anyway, they're outlawed in town. Presumably, you can outlaw them other places. Last year, we talked about a similar effort in the Quays area, or Quidnet, somewhere out there. It didn't go forward because it didn't get a positive motion from the planning board, but there is a definition. So, whether you feel one way or the other about it, it is possible, I think.
And has the town restriction been in place a long time? When did that come about?
3-4 years ago, was it?
No, longer, I think, than that.
90s, I thought, or early,
No.
was in the early 2000s, because the last one I think that went in was 104 Main, and that might have been the early 2000s.
We just recently, you talked about the old historic
Yeah, I think
district.
that's
It's on
They're
Fair
down-
Street,
yeah.
next to the
Yeah,
St.
3
Paul's
Fair.
Church. Yeah, well, it has been a while.
What is the timing from hearing from other committees, like the real estate committee? I mean, I would, because I'm new, would find that very
Yeah,
beneficial.
the real estate committee's new. I'm not sure their timeline. Libby, do you know?
I'm going to be sending them a memo hopefully this week, reminding them or asking them, requesting them to review all of the real estate articles and to get you a report by the beginning to mid-January.
Okay,
Right.
okay, that's great.
Actually, a quick question on the yard sale stuff too, which has been explained to me before, but is there a quick way to describe how the money works?
No, I don't think so. Maybe Brian can.
Quick, no.
No.
But generally, when you say the money,
Financial ramifications.
Don't they usually take the land, convey it to ask the first person that abuts it if they want to buy it?
Well, we put it out to bid.
there's a procurement process and there's generally a minimum bid set based on an appraisal or comps in the area. The successful bidder, person who bid the highest, would generally get the bid and they would pay into the real estate sales account, which is an established account under Massachusetts general law that municipalities can put funds into when they sell property. There's also some legal fees that are meant to come out of that might be associated with the transfer of the property. And we are running into a little bit of an issue with outstanding taxes that might exist on a property and how those are going to be paid. And once the money's gone into the real estate account, there are specific uses for it.
So that, in order to use any of the money in the real estate account, it can only be used for something, well, first of all, if there's debt associated with any of the parcels that are acquired, it has to be used to cover the debt. If there's no debt associated with the parcel, then it can be used for anything that can be borrowed under Mass General Law for a period of 5 years or longer. So it's very specific on what we can, we have to find some things that we would be allowed to borrow money for a period of 5 years or longer that we could actually use it for.
Thanks.
Anything else?
I know you brought up a lot of different stuff last meeting. But we're gonna have another public hearing in January. Is that the way it's going?
Yeah, I think what I got, what David's preference is, was that we have this one meeting where we invite everybody, and then he reached out specifically to some people. I think Catherine Stover, for instance, was on that list because she had a number of articles, so he specifically invited some people. No, maybe he said, maybe Catherine was a bad example, but he was going to invite individuals to come and discuss at length their articles. So we will have another series of articles, and if any member of the committee sees something on this list, a person who you'd like David to reach out to, you should let him know.
I don't think you have a public hearing in January. I think there's the regular public hearing in February for all the warrant articles. Maybe excluding the citizen ones, but that'll be once the warrant has been adopted.
What was the 28th? What was that date? I looked at that somewhere last time.
That's a Saturday, right?
That's the Saturday meeting.
That's the budget.
Saturday budget review.
All right.
26th and 28th.
Stuff.
Great. Seeing nothing else, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.